Hi guys, good morning. So I want to share with you guys, I heard a message a few days back about, it's in 2 Samuel 23, and it's about fighting for your field. What are you fighting for? What is your field that you're standing your ground in? And it's amazing. And then a book I ordered a few days before that came in the day after I watched it, and it's so odd that the book is based on Samuel 23. It's talking about that. And then last night, after study with the girls, I shared a little bit about it with someone, and I was like, this just needs to be shared because it's just so alive in my spirit. I get so excited. It's amazing. So I have my Bible. Bear with me because I have a lot of sticky notes that I wrote down that I did not want to forget. So 2 Samuel 23. First, we're going to go in verse 11 and 12. And after him was Shammah, the son of Agi, the Hariite. The Philistines had gathered together into a troop where there was a piece of ground full of lentils. So the people fled from the Philistines. Verse 12. But he stationed himself in the middle of the field, defended it, and killed the Philistine. So the Lord brought about a great victory. So what do we see? There was a bunch gathered in a field. Pay attention to the ground full of lentils. Okay, the people fled, so they all left because the Philistines was in that land and that station on that ground. But he stood his ground. He stood there himself. He stationed himself. He rooted himself. He grounded himself there. He didn't flee from what was around him, but he stood. He killed the Philistine. So he defended his land and he overcame it, and God brought the victory. So I think it's Shammah. Okay. His name, I'm trying to find my sticky note because I'm telling you I have so many stuck right now. Where is it? Oh, okay. His dad, I'm sorry. His dad's name, I'm thinking of Jabez. I'm sorry. Anyway, his dad's name, that the son of Agi. So his dad, the name Agi, is a fugitive or a coward. And he was what was labeled, spoken, like the label. So and that's what he did. He ran, he fled until the day he encountered the king. And he encountered King David. So that was his dad. So you know how it talks like family, like things get passed down to our kids, or when you speak names over something, you're speaking that over it. And that was his background. That was his dad. So that was his story. So as him being, he's listed in David's mighty men in his army. So he stood there and he stationed himself there. And hold on, verse 11, where he stood in the ground full of lentils, it's beans. That was the field that was ready for the harvest. So he stood there and fought. The enemy always attacks right before the harvest, right when God's about to birth something, when the tests come, when the trials come, when they're at hand. That's when the enemy attacks. But he stationed himself there. He stood there. He was fighting for his field. What are we fighting for? What are you fighting for? What is your field? That you're standing in it, and don't give up. Don't give up. Stand your ground. In that field of harvest, that God's ready to pull that harvest out and bring the blessing. There's always a process to the promise. You know, he stationed himself there with the Philistines. Well, what is the Philistine in our life? What is it that's taunting us in our field of our harvest? What are we fighting for? What is that ground? You know, it's God, you know, God's saying, will we trust him? You know, when we encounter the King, which is Jesus, we're changed. We're different. Our mind is set on him. So we're being spirit-led and not self-led, you know, and it's encountering him and trusting him, you know, and it's knowing our enemy. It's knowing, what is that Philistine? What is that that's going to come and try and take my harvest? So I'm going to stand my ground, station myself right in the midst of it, and I'm not going to move. And that's what Shammah did. Shammah. And it's just so amazing how it's so like in our seasons, in every season, in every journey, you know, are we going to stand? Are we going to get weak? Are we going to get weary and throw in our sword and be like, I'm just done, I just can't do it? No. God is telling us to stand our ground. What we're fighting for, he's with us there. He's ready to give the victory if we trust and follow him and station ourselves there and ground it. This is how we ground ourselves, in the word of God, in the midst of our field. And don't focus on the Philistine, the circumstances, that taunting giant that's trying to take our harvest, but fight the right way with the word of God, being rooted in his word. And I had on here, oh yeah, I did find it. I'm telling you, I have a whole bunch of notes. Shammah's name means fear, runaway, devastated, and humiliated. So every time someone was speaking his name, it was like that's what they were saying. So that's how I went back to his dad's name was a coward and a fugitive. So that was what he was known as. But as David chose him in his, you know, his mighty men, this was one of the mighty acts where he stationed himself and they won that battle. That was David's mighty man in his army. Christ redeems us, you know. He's our Redeemer. He gives us what we need in that field. He prepares us. You know, all we have to do is just say, yes, Lord, I'm here. Even if we feel like we can't do that, we're not capable, we don't know how to do that, we're just nobodies. He gives us what we need. All we have to do is say yes, and he prepares us what we need through that field at that time. And it's just so, I don't know, it's just something about this gets me so excited about right before the harvest is an attack, you know. Verse 12, he stationed himself in the field, defended it, killed the Philistines, so it brought a great victory. Are you standing your field? What is your lentils? What is your harvest that's planted there, that's ready to be harvested? What is it? What have you been praying for? What have you been seeking God for? And planting those seeds, and they're there. They sprouted like the lentils, which is beans. But what is it for you that's ready? And that the enemy's coming at you and trying to take it, to knock you out, so you don't get that promise, that blessing that God has already given us. And he's given it to you. But it's up to you to station yourself there and not give up. To be strong in the Lord, to be brave, to be courageous, and standing your ground and believe in it and fighting for it and not letting the enemy overtake it. What have we been planting seeds for? Fight your ground. Fight for your field, whatever that looks like, whatever it is, you know. God is with you. He is strengthening us to be brave, to be courageous, to stand that ground, to position us. What is the position he's calling you to not give up, to keep going, because there's the process to the promise, the journey, the series of journeys to get to that next place where then we can be like, this is my memorial stone, and marked as our testimonies to share with others. You know, there's always pain before the promise. It's a process. And in that process, God sees us and God hears us, like he did in this story with David's mighty men, Shammah. I think it's Shammah. Shammah. I have a hard time pronouncing these names, guys. I'm sorry. But read 2 Samuel 23. It really starts in verse 8 all the way to 23. You know, it's so much in here about our faith and how are we going to approach the situations when we're placed in them. You know, are we going to stand just like God's been showing me? Stand your ground. Be grounded in him and what we know. And we know that from his word. That is how we water that seed in that harvest field. Just remember the pain before the promise. And the enemy's there. He's ready. He's there and he doesn't want that. So he's going to come against us. But let's be as though Shammah was there, stationed himself. And there was something else I didn't want to forget. You know, as David's mighty men, as you know, they're listed in here, David's mighty men. You know, they were leaders. They were, you know, leading the armies. But what is a leader? And in this, you know, a leader is basically just saying, I'm here, Lord. So leaders are volunteers, just to say, I'm here, use me. Are we volunteering? Or are we just kicking back and watching, you know? Ezekiel 48:35. It's the last place we see Shammah talked about, and it's all the way around shall be 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that day shall be the Lord is there, and it's Yahweh Shammah. And in that, in him standing his ground, station that, you know, the Lord is there. The Lord was there with him all the time. And then we see that Yahweh Shammah, that he's there. He is there with us through the attacks, through the ground, whatever ground we're standing in the midst of our harvest. And remember that he is there. He is with us, giving us what we need to be strengthened to give us the victory to overcome that. I just love this, and I'm telling you, I have so many sticky notes. I'm sorry. I hope all this made sense. As you guys see in my head, I'm stuck everywhere. But read it, read the story, see what God is saying to you, and just remember that right before the harvest, and whatever seed you've planted that's ready, that's when the attacks come. The pain before the harvest, before the promise, and to station yourself grounded there. Don't flee, don't run as everyone else did, but station yourself in that field. So fight for your field, whatever that field is. Don't give up. Stay grounded. Stay close to Jesus. Read his word and get ready to claim your victory through Jesus and his strength and his courage to keep us there in that field. And reap your harvest. Don't let the enemy steal it. Victory's coming.